Just before, just before the beginning of the new year, Okita's condition worsened. It was determined that he had contracted pulmonary tuberculosis. His disease wasn't uncommon, but it was incurable. I suspected that he might be seriously ill when he began to lose his strength, but had never guessed that tuberculosis was the cause. The entire Shinsengumi was shocked and saddened by the news. It was decided that he was to head to Osaka, where Matsumoto-sensei was residing with Kondo-san, who was also in dire need of treatment. The new year came, and it was now 1868. Kyoto was still on high alert. I gotta remember, they say Kyo instead of Kyoto. The Shinsengumi remained on standby at the Fushimi Magistrate's office through the year-end celebrations. My hope that tempers would calm and the threat of war would fade lasted until 3 days after the new year. A dispute arose between the Satsuma domain and a group of shogunate troops attempting to enter Kyo. Violence broke out, and suddenly, war was upon us. The shogunate army in Kyo numbered roughly 15,000 men, while the Satsuma Choshu alliance commanded only 5,000. Victory for the shogun should have been a foregone conclusion. The Satsho, however, had bet their very livelihoods on this war, and determination and morale were high. Perhaps more importantly, the Satsuma had faced the British in battle, and the Choshu had faced the British, French, and Dutch. Both domains had learned modern Western tactics, armed with only swords against the Satsuma and Choshu rifles. The Shinsengumi were at a tremendous disadvantage. They use Western tactics, yet they're imperialists, which means they don't really like foreigners and stuff, and the West. But yet, I don't know, unless I have this whole thing wrong. What? During the war, the Fushimi Magistrate Office was yawned to oblivion and hell. No, set on fire, and the Shinsengumi had no choice but to retreat from Kyo. Yeah, I'm fine. We can't afford to stop. I'll be alright. I wiped the sweat from my brow, took a deep breath, and forced my throbbing feet to move. We were on our way to Yodo Castle, under orders from Hijikata-san. The Shinsengumi was doing poorly, so we've been dispatched to bring reinforcements. Do you really think the people at Yodo Castle will help us out?
何としてでも助けてもらわねばな。トシさんのためにも絶対に。あの人に負けは似合わない。もうあの人のあんな顔は見たくないからな。
I remember the Battle of Fushimi all too clearly. On the evening of the third day of the new year, the war began. Cannons pounded the Fushimi Magistrate's office, and the ground shook with each impact.
Hijikata-san, もう無理だ。奴ら坂の上にバカでかい大砲を仕掛けてやがる。坂を登ろうとした端から撃ち殺されちまう。ありゃ切り合いに持ち込むなんて無理だぜ。
しかも奴らの持っている銃、射程が恐ろしく長い。あれほど離れているというのに、2発に1発が命中している。
新八のやつはどうしたんだ。見当たらねえが。
新八なら2番隊15名とともに敵陣へ切り込みに行ってる。
敵陣に切り込みって正気か。どう考えたって生きて帰ってこられるはずがねえだろう。
I could see muscles working in Hijikata's jaw, but he said nothing. His face was pale, although whether from fear or tension, I couldn't tell. Outside, the roar of the cannons continued unabated. Just when it seemed certain that Nagakura must have perished.
よう、ただいま。今戻ったぜ。
新八
Cries of surprise filled the room.
生きていたのか。まさか。
おっと、幽霊じゃないぜ。よく見てくれよ。足もちゃんとついてるから。
The thing about Nagakura is incredibly hard to fucking kill, and the fact that ends up being one of the survivors at the end of the actual Shinsengumi. Holy shit. he is stubborn as fuck. It takes a whole lot more for him to fucking die. He lived for a very long time. In fact, it is a known fact that he enjoyed movies a lot. And I think he died in 1915? I could be wrong about that. He grinned as he wiped a thick smear of blood and dirt from his face.
ただ、敵本陣に飛び込むのはどうやっても無理だった。先に出て行った合図の部隊も押し返されてるみてえだ。
副長、この先に進むのはかなり困難かと。ご決断をお願いします。
His brow furrowed, and he scowled furiously.
おい、なんだこりゃ。どこかから煙が流れてきてやがるぞ。
大砲の火が奉行所に燃え移ったか。さっさと逃げねえとやばいぜ。土方さん、撤退だ。
Even Nagakura's pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears.
トシさん、
Until this moment, the Shinsengumi had never known defeat in battle, but they were helpless against the firearms of the Satsuma and Choshu. The Shinsengumi was Hijikata-san's life. Defeat was hard to accept. After what seemed like an eternity, he let out a long, ragged sigh.
なるほど。刀や槍の時代じゃねえってことだな。
His knuckles turned white. There were several more minutes of tense, breathless silence before he finally looked up, his eyes burning with fury.
ここは撤退だ。だがまだ負けたわけじゃねえ。この借りは必ず返してやるからな。
Fury wasn't the only thing in those eyes. Behind them, I could see a bitter, desperate agony.
あの人がどんな思いで撤退の言葉を口にしたか、付き合いの長い私にはよく分かってるつもりだ。負け戦なんてのは一度経験すればもう十分だよ。私は刀としてはまるっきり勇さんたちの役に立たないと思ってる。
What? No, don't say that. He interrupted me with a kind smile and continued.
ただ、こんな私でも新選組を勝たせるためにできることはきっと何かあるはずだ。だから頑張ろうな。
The Shinsengumi and Kondo-san and Hijikata-san needed my help. I had to do whatever I could. It took us several hours to reach Yodo Castle. Hijikata-san's hope was to use the castle as a new staging area where he could garrison our troops and launch ambushes from. Unfortunately, that's weird. Why are the gates closed? Do you think they're already preparing for battle? There were no guards outside the castle anywhere we could see. It was uncomfortably quiet. He stood for a moment, absently rubbing his chin in thought, before finally making a decision.
我々は幕命を受けて参った。お上に弓引く逆賊を迎え撃つため力を貸してもらいたい。
His voice echoed out through the stillness, but no one responded. I had almost begun to think the castle was simply abandoned when... Look! There's someone in that window. Huh? They've got something shiny.
危ない！伏せなさい！
Huh? Inoue grabbed me by the wrist and pulled me pulled me. Gunshots echoed from the castle walls. My eyes started around, but there was no rebels nearby. That meant that the bullets were meant for us. What's going on? I thought the Yodo were friendly.
薩長の勢いに気をされたか。はたまた民を戦乱に巻き込みたくないとの辛抱遠慮か。とりあえず本体へ戻ろう。これ以上ここにいるのは危険だ。
But Hijikata-san told us to get reinforcements from Yodo. Inoue only shook his head.
あんたももう分かってるだろう。彼らは我々の味方ではない。ここに長居すればするだけ、あんたの身を危険にさらすことになる。
But if we leave, then what's going to happen to Hijikata-san? What's going to happen to the Shinsengumi? Let's try to talk to them. If we explain what's going on, I'm sure they'll understand. I've never seen Inoue glare at me before.
いい加減にしなさい。トシさんのために増援を呼びたいのは私だって同じだ。だが私はヨド藩に援軍を頼みに行くのと同時にあんたを守る役目も仰せつかってるんだよ。もしあんたの身に何かあれば命令に背くことになる。さあ。
There was nothing I could say. Inoue had fought alongside Hijikata-san since their first days in Edo, before the Shinsengumi. He had undoubtedly felt even more devastated by Yodo's betrayal than I had, but he still had chosen to retreat so that he might protect me. Never before. Much yawning. Never before had I felt so ashamed and so helpless. There was nothing I could do. I'm sorry. I'm useless. I failed. Tears welled up in my eyes and I brushed them away roughly.
気にせんでいいよ。何、トシさんのことだ。きっとこの状況をひっくり返すだけの奇策を考えてくれるさ。
He laid his hand on my shoulder and gave it a gentle, reassuring squeeze. I focused on the warmth of his hand and felt myself begin to calm down. Your hand is warm. It reminds me of when my father used to pat me on the head when I was a little girl.
父様か。そうだな。私も本来はあんたくらいの娘がいてもおかしくない年なんだよな。
I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong?
いやいや、そんなことないさ。こんな可愛い娘なら大歓迎だ。さあ、戻ろうか。私たちがなかなか戻ってこなくて、大使たちも心配しているだろう。
Alright, I wish we had more scenes with Gen-san. Holy shit. What? We were nearly to the location where we left the rest of the soldiers, but something felt wrong. Wait. Weren't they supposed to be here? There wasn't a single soul around. Did we get lost?
いや、そんなはずはない。確かここをまっすぐ行ったところに。
Then, as we rounded the corner, I noticed something lying on the ground. Inoue! There's someone over here!
まさか、薩長の軍勢はまだここまで来ていないはずだが。
He's wearing Shinsengumi blues. Could he?
足音を立てるんじゃない。ゆっくり近づこう。
I nodded. Could the Sacho Alliance already have troops here? If they did, they were hiding them very well. Neither Inoue nor I could sense anyone nearby. No rebels, but no Shinsengumi either. Then we came around another bend in the road and I gasped. Warriors in the blue jackets of the Shinsengumi were piled up along the road, dead where they'd fallen. And standing in the middle of this carnage.
見覚えのある羽織を着た連中がうろついているから まさかとは思った
The bitch has arrived!
が、やはり貴様らも来ていたか。
Kazuma's smile was a cruel, mocking thing. You! Why? I was so furious I could barely speak.
ヨド藩の動向を見に出向いたまでだ。面倒ごとにもたまには手を出してみるものだな。まさかこんなところで会えるとは思わなかったぞ。
I felt his eyes on me, like those of a snake staring down its prey before they shifted to take the ground around him.
お前が戻ってくるまでの退屈しのぎにこの連中と遊んではみたが、残念ながら暇すら潰せなかったな。
Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Inoue shake with rage. Most of the men who lay dead on the ground in front of us were members of his 6th Division. And now, because I had chosen to stay with the Shinsengumi, Kazuma had returned, and Inoue's men were dead. Kazuma had taken their lives, and for what?
前回は思わぬ邪魔が入ったが、今度こそ一緒に来てもらうぞ。
Kazuma had demonic powers that put him in a class above any mortal man. 2 skilled swordsmen working in concert might be able to hold him back, but not defeat him. Inoue and I would not be able to defeat him, nor, as I suspected, would he allow us to escape. If I surrendered to him, however, then he might let Inoue leave. I stepped forward and steeled myself.
下がっていなさい。
Inoue moved forward to put himself between me and Kazuma. Inoue? I had a bad feeling about this. What are you doing?
早く逃げなさい。そしてトシさんにこう伝えてくれ。力不足で申し訳ない。最後まで共にあれなかったことを許してほしい。こんな私を今日まで一緒に連れてきてくれて、最後の夢を見せてくれて、感謝してもしきれないとね。
No! I can't do that! I won't just leave you here to die! This man is after me! If I go with him, then you can live! Please! Inoue's smile was bitter.
やれやれ。女を盾にして逃げろっていうのかい。そりゃ武士の風上にも置けんだろう。それにな、子供を守って死ぬってのは親の本望でもある。
This hurts. Oh, this hurts. This hurts so much.
親ってのは子供より先に死ぬもんだからな。
But Inoue had finished talking, though. He turned his back to me and drew his sword. Suddenly, I remembered the conversation we had on the way back from Yodo Castle. He told me that he was old enough to have a daughter my age. No, I cried to myself. That doesn't mean he has to do this. How could he throw his life away? Please, Inoue, run! I screamed and pleaded, but his back didn't move.
本性の別れは済んだか。では、先ほどの言葉に込められた本気がどれほどのものか、試してみるとするか。
Kazuma let his hand fall from the hilt of his undrawn sword. Inoue launched himself at Kazuma and swung his in a wide arc towards the demon's neck. Cosmo's sword slid out of its scabbard too fast for the eye to follow. His hand simply blurred and the tip of his blade emerged from Inoue's back. Blood bubbled out between his lips. Inoue! He fell to his knees, the deep red stain rapidly devouring the light blue of his jacket. Kazuma's eyes flickered like sparks, and he bent down to whisper to Inoue.
どうした人間。先ほど俺に殺された連中はお前の部下なんだ。仇を討ちたくはないのか。武士というのは仲間の仇討ちを美徳とすると耳にしたぞ。
Inoue glared back at him with white, hot rage. He reached into the pocket of his kimono and was taking something out. It was... No.
清水か。どこまでも見苦しいやつめ。見下げ果てたぞ。貴様ごときもはや生かしておくだけの価値もない。そのまま苦しんで死ね。
Inoue lifted the tip of the lid, attempting to drink the water of life, but then... Kazuma simply laughed and stepped easily around Inoue's swinging sword.